Hi everyone, this is Bobi of Timeless Tempest here with another easy wire wrap ring tutorial. First you're going to need 20 gauge copper round wire and 28 gauge copper round wire. And next we'll need our semi-flush cutters and either your needle nose or chain nose. In this case I'm using needle nose. And 2 small beads. You'll also need a ring mandrel, which I did not show you. Here I have 5 pieces of 20 gauge wire at about 6 inches and about 10 inches of 28 gauge wire. First, take 1 piece of your 20 gauge copper and coil around your 20 gauge 2 times with the 28 gauge. Start your weave about 2 inches to 1.5 inches away from your ends. Grab a second piece of 20 gauge copper and wrap around both of your wires. Both 20 gauge, sorry. Next, grab the third piece, set it right on top, make sure all the ends are nice and even. And then we're going to want to wrap all 3 of these together. Remember not to make your wraps too tight, because then there's no space in between the wire, and if there's no space in between the wire, then it's going to be hard to continue to work your pattern. Grab your 4th piece of copper 20 gauge wire. Now here we'll go down over top and then in between the 1st and 2nd wires from the bottom. Wrap around the top 3 2 times. 1. In between the 1st and 2nd wire again. There's 2. Push them together. Make sure they're laying neatly. Make sure all of your wires are nice and straight. Put your 5th piece of copper on top. Then we're going to come down over top of that and in between wires number 2 and 3 and wrap around the top 3 2 times. Two times. It's time number 2. Then we get to start with our decrease now that we have our basic pyramid-esque shape. Make sure that all of your ends are nice and straight. You don't want them to get bent up. We'll be using those. Wrap around just the 2 by sliding your weaving wire in between wires number 3 and 4 from the bottom. And wrap around them twice. Just the top 2 20 gauge. You want to do that 2 times, as you see that I've done here. Push them together, make sure they all sit nice. Then the last part of our decrease, you want to come over top and wrap just the top wire 2 times. Push it together too. Make sure everything's laying together nice and straight. Once you get some more segments, you can use your chain nose or nylon jaw pliers and push these down, which will make them look flatter and neater. You want to come down over top and wrap all 5 of your 20 gauge wires together. Be sure to leave it just a little loose so that you can continue your pattern. You continue your pattern by starting by wrapping just the bottom wire 2 times again. And here you see that I have completed this pattern. All you have to do is just repeat until you get a segment that's big enough to go around whichever size finger you're looking for. I'm making about a 6. Here we're going to take the top of the 5 20 gauge wires, pull it out a little bit, and stick our bead down onto it. Make a little curl, keeping your bead about where you want it. Bring the extra end to the back of your weave. You want this end, when you clip it, which I'll trim now, trim it real close to the bead, because you want that end that's coming out of the bottom of the bead to touch the top of that weave right there, so that it'll sit in place and the bead won't come out. I'm using just normal little pink glass beads that I got at Hobby Lobby, I believe. If you need to, use your pliers to turn it just a little more to make sure that it stays in that place, that your bead isn't going to come off. Grab wire number 2, the one just below it, and follow the same shape. Leave a little distance in between them just for an extra added scallop effect. Then you want to bend it right next to the end that goes into the bead. You want to bend it to where it's sitting right next to it. We're going to trim this. Trim it relatively close, right at the top of the bead, so that you can tuck the small sharp end to the top of the bead and it won't be sharp anymore. It won't catch, it'll be pointing inwards, away from the finger. Run your finger across it to make sure. Take wire number 3 and do the same thing, leaving a little space in between it and the last wire. Then bending it right beside it, giving it that scalloped shape that we're looking for. Once again, we're going to trim it relatively short so that we can use our fingers and just push it right inside the little spot right behind the last wire. You can see how they sit next to each other, but how when they come out they have space between each other also. Take wire number 4, continue to follow the pattern. Make sure to leave about the same amount of space between all of your wires. Consistency is a big part of this ring, from the band to the scallop pattern of the swirls. I'm going to bend it to where the end will go right in behind the last wire again. Trim it, then use your fingers to bend it in. You don't want to bend it too much, because then you'll bend it out of shape. Just bend it enough to where the end will go right in that little space behind the last wire. Then the final wire, we're going to do the exact same thing, bringing it upwards, trying to give it about the same amount of space as the others. Then bring it in and bend it down just where the tip is going to go right behind the last wire. We're going to clip it and then use our fingers to tuck in that end. When you tuck in that end, you should be able to run your fingers across the back of it to make sure that there are no pointy pieces of metal sticking out that will be uncomfortable when you wear it. That's the end of one side. You see, we have our curl going this one specific way. And what we'll do is we'll turn it upside down and we'll make the other curl going the opposite way. Gonna bend it up just a little, then take our bead, slide it on down. You want to try to keep your bead up a little bit away from the very end, otherwise you could make your loop too small, which is actually the problem that I end up coming about right here, but that's okay. You see, it's just a little crooked, but that's okay. So what I'm going to do is bend it inwards just a little more. It's going to make that side just a tad smaller, but that's okay. A tad smaller is okay. And you know, this is all yours. If you decide to make this and you want to change the design a little bit, by all means, change the design a little bit. Make it all your own. I'm going to use my needle nose here to try and make a little room so that I can turn it just a little, then snip it, then bend it to where the end of the wire coming out of the bead is sitting right on top of the weave. Then we're going to repeat the process for this side. You want to make certain that you are bending all of these towards the correct way. You see, I started to go backwards here and had to bring it forwards because I realized that I wasn't going the correct way. But that's okay. As long as you're paying attention, you can fix it. Bring the beginning of the curl close, but make sure there's a little distance between. Then we'll curl it behind it. Having a little trouble with this bead still. That's okay. There it is. That should be good now. Okay. Now bring this curl over to sit next to your bead. Curl the top down right towards like you were gonna slip it right in the bead, but you're not. You can't. There's no room. Snip it close, and then use your pliers to push it in. Just the tip. Just a little. Oh, having a little trouble. There we go. You see how the end is pointing directly towards the top of my bead. If it sits there, then it won't catch you when you wear it. Take the next piece of 20 gauge and follow the outside of the last piece, and then bring the swirl, the end, right next to the other, just like we did before on the other side. And that's okay. Those aren't sitting together very well, but they will once we're finished and everything is set. Then you can rearrange all those little pieces and make them sit just right. I'm going to trim this right above the bead. Then take the end, curl it in a little if you have to. I obviously needed to. And then just tuck it right on the inside. Next one. Follow the same line all the way up and around, and you can see where they sit next to each other. Then you just bring it to sit next to the very last one that you did. Bend it in a little bit. Just a little. Then trim it. And tuck it in there. Just a wee bit. Just enough to where it's not going to catch you and you won't ruin it by maybe slipping your hand in your pocket or taking a sweater off. Use the last wire to follow the line and then bring it down just beside the last wire. And do the same thing. You want to snip it off right at the bead and then tuck it in. That is the finished general shape of our ring, which of course you see the hardest part really is the weave itself. You see everything's kind of come apart, but once I put it on my ring mandrel and I size it, it will not sit like that anymore. So that's okay. That's temporary, not a big deal. We'll fix that. And make sure that both of your sides look even, everything looks nice. Then take your ring mandrel, and I like to start at about the 7 to start shaping my ring. It will end up being a 6, but I always start a little bit bigger just to make the shape nice. You can really figure out the shape if it's a little bit bigger, especially for an adjustable ring. You can bend out these little scalloped edges as much as you want or as little as you want. And there's our general shape. Now you've made my simple ring. It is one weave and it is adjustable, 100% adjustable. And once you have it on there and you don't like the shape, just bend them all back to however you want. Because once you have them all bent back where you want, it is the shape that it's going to be. So they're not going to come out of that shape anymore after that. You just got to make them how you want. I like mine to sit a little bit farther apart just because it gives the real scalloped feel to it. There you go. That's your finished swirly ring. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope that you come back for more. Please don't be afraid to check out my Etsy shop and maybe possibly purchase this tutorial or many of the others that I have. Thank you very much. Have a great day.